So let's imagine you're an advisor of some sort in some skill set that's uniquely valuable. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be legal, wealth, psychology. It is important. Academics call it necessary, but not sufficient commonly. In other words, I can't do the skills that others can do. It's kind of like building a house. If I'm the general contractor, I need a bunch of other people to help build that house. Well, what I've learned is that most of the folks who struggle are not really other oriented. They're not generous. They're not thinking about a team. Here's an example. Years ago, I created Doug's List. Nothing original, probably. And it happened when I relocated to Charlotte. I did the same thing when I relocated to Nashville. In Washington, D.C., prior to all that, I had a list, and it made eminent good sense to me. I essentially reached out to local folks and I asked the following question. You should write this down. It's worth asking. Would you be willing to be considered as a source of expertise for any of my clients should they need you in the future? Call people, have coffee or lunch or dinner or something, and invariably you'll learn who's good, who's qualified, who's generous, who's not, who's transactional. You'll drop all those and then make your own list with, say, six or eight categories. So there's the folks who are going to help with valuations. There's the folks who are going to help with insurance. Here are the folks who are going to help with estate law. Pick your categories and then have three or four names. Why? Because your clients need choices. They don't want one person that's odd. They want to know three people who can clean the windows so you can get the windows cleaned. And it's also a way for you to model what you know to be true. You are serving clients in a multidisciplinary team of advisors. This is not an original Doug idea. It's ancient. And one of the researchers who I tend to like is Thomas Stanley, who did this work many years ago. And I think that's where I got that idea from, but I've been doing it forever. And I invite you to do the same. So that's number one. If you're an advisor, build your list, whatever it's called, and consider the categories, ask people that question, and share it regularly with your current clients and prospective clients. Second, host some sort of affinity group or peer group. I don't know what it might look like. For me, they're next gen peer groups, and there's two types. So one is B2C, one's B2B. So the B2Cs are next gen leaders who are lonely, maybe full of anxiety, maybe. Maybe they raise their hand and say, yes, I need this process. I'm aware of this, and I look forward to the content and such. Or secondly, they could be folks who are nominated by an elder. It could be somebody in a family council, for instance. It could be that wealthier or more generous uncle or aunt who knows that you're concerned about the future of your family enterprise. Well, those folks need a group to hang with. And they don't need gray haired people like me. They need people their own age in different skills and different geographies. So commonly, their next gens are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, frankly, and they're not patient. Patient capital is a myth invented by some academics. Impatient capital is the reality. They're not able to sleep well at night. They're hopeful. They're waiting. They're loving and trusting. But some of them don't know their trust advisory terms. They don't know the scale. They don't need the scope. And they've been taught through school and their peers to ask questions. So we've raised this group of Gen Zs and Xs and such who are articulate and expect answers. They expect a degree of transparency from their advisors. So if you hold back and say, I'm not going to share that until you're of a certain age or until a certain elder releases that permission, you're going to lose trust that fast and it won't be a good opportunity for you. So that's number two. Host some peer group or affinity group, and it could be a dinner. It could be something at the country club. It could be uh, an invited guest or an expert that you think will be useful to folks in your geography. And that's the B2C model. B2B is when I host a group for an association and they know that they've got to develop and retain their people, but they don't know how to do it. Every association I've worked with for decades has struggled with developing and retaining folks. So the peer groups that we provide for them, they help to market and promote and such. Often they'll co-facilitate. Often they'll use the content that I've got on a digital platform. That's an example of collaboration. So let's imagine, this is still on point number two, that you host peer groups or affinity groups of some sort for a sector. You don't need to be the subject matter expert. You need to be the host, like you're hosting a dinner party. You're inviting others to that process so that they can grow and learn, and they see you as the expert. So that's number two. To review, number one was create a list, your list. Number two was create some kind of affinity or peer groups. Number three is to take care of yourself. And I don't mean that in a fuzzy or loose way. Self-care is critically important for advisors who often don't have social support systems that keep them going. This is the reason why many groups exist, is to provide the social support. It's the need for affiliation is critically important. It's ancient. So what do you do? One idea is to create a personal advisory board. The other day, I returned from some travel, and I reached out to a person whom I revere, who's about 8 years older. He's built a business, and he's brilliant in lots of ways, provocative, difficult. I like him immensely. So we met at his golf course and had a 2 hour lunch with no agenda. And it led to a realization that we're still like this. And I was very comfortable saying, would you be willing to be on my personal advisory board for a period of time? Here's what I imagine. It'll be informal. I'll pay for lunch, dinner anytime. And I imagine that we'll meet quarterly moving forward until um, we evolve in some way. And he was quick to say, of course. He's of an age where he loves to be asked. People love to be asked to be needed. So that's number three. Create some personal advisory board that'll be useful to you to keep yourself going. But number four is more important because it's going to generate revenue, and that's to make sure that you're always soliciting client feedback. I'll repeat. Make sure you're always soliciting client feedback. The phrase I use is after each session, whether it's an individual or a team session, what are you taking away from this session that you are going to do next? I'm not doing the work. That's a silly notion. Clients do the work. I provide structures and templates and timelines and support and everything I can imagine that they would need because I've got libraries of resources and lots of expertise, but they do the work. So if I don't ask them, what are you taking away from the session that you are going to do next? They're certainly not going to do it. And I'm not going to get the feedback that I need. So when somebody says, this happened last week at an event, happened to be a direct event, a peer group in Denver. One of the participants said, this is extraordinary for me. I can't imagine not being at it at this program, and I'm looking forward to the next one. For that person, this was a catalyst for their professional development and personal development and all the rest. And they had a half dozen takeaways, specific actions that they were going to implement with their family business. I don't think we do a great job of asking for feedback. I see it again and again. I hear people creating excuses, advisors, consultants. You know this. Anybody with a business card, in theory, can call themselves a consultant and they can charge whatever. Yesterday, I had a conversation with somebody who's brilliant, who's been in this field, a different field, for 45 years. And he said, oh, yeah, I've just retired from wherever, and now I'm consulting. So I pressed him a little bit about the engagement. He said, yeah, it's one of my golfing buddies. And we looked at valuation and we looked at his next steps, and I charged him for that service. And I'm thinking, okay. So I pressed him because we're good friends. And that's how we sharpen the saw. How much did you charge for that service? He said, oh, I gave it away, 1,500 bucks. And I said, you realize that you're devaluing your expertise, his need for expertise, and the whole profession of consulting, whatever that phrase might conjure for you. I believe there's a profession of consulting which requires that we serve a social good. In other words, we accelerate the needs of other folks. Well, this guy didn't. He is brilliant and generous, doesn't need the money. That's not the point. He devalued the service because he didn't ask what would be valuable to you. And that's a question I commonly ask. Yesterday, a new prospect, a referral from a client who was very excited about working together and will do so, I'm sure. And I stated, or she asked, what's the scope of this engagement? I said, well, typically it sounds like this is something we could wrap up in a year. And it sounds like if you and your siblings were and other owners were willing to engage in this process, it'd be maybe a 50 or 60K process in that time frame. Are you comfortable with that? And she said, sure. Well, I can sell 50 or 60K engagements all year long. So can you. When you think about the outcomes or the value from that process, I think most advisors are going to catapult their businesses. And I do that because that's my experience. Now, that required a mind shift. And Alan Weiss is one of my mentors. I've only met him twice. But here's a book for many consultants or advisors who are struggling with outcome-based consulting and pricing. It's critically important. It's redefining our profession. It doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur like me with all kinds of licensees and teams of people that you can provide service. It doesn't matter how big your operation is. Uh, Yesterday, I talked with uh, two folks, one at Accenture, one at PwC. Massive organizations. They're focused on the skills they need to develop in this age of AI and cybersecurity that they don't have, despite the fact they've been doing this consulting work for 30 plus years. I think we need to model that. So, number four, solicit honest feedback. Last one, number five, speak at groups that don't do what you do. Speak at groups that don't do what you do. Why? Because when you're in the front of the room, you get to control the message and the opportunities, and you get to give away whatever you choose to give away. I do this occasionally and love it. It always leads to new business. When I think about our value as consultants, it's not to go hang with other people in our swim lane. That's silly. That's affiliation. That's what we do at the country club or with our friends when we go to dinner. It's important. It keeps us going, but it doesn't generate new business and it doesn't generate value for our prospective clients. So later today, flying to California. I live in Nashville, Tennessee most of the time to speak at a group tomorrow, which has 70 or 80 folks in the room. I'll get the contact information. I'll follow up with all those folks. They're all small business owners, and they're in a sector that I don't really know that much about, but they care about succession planning and continuity, and they need me. They may or may not know that. They may or may not have attended this event in part. It's a 3-day deal because of that topic. But we've got 2 hours together. So, of course, I'm going to share a whole bunch of content and a whole bunch of information that'll accelerate their succession planning conversations. Why wouldn't I? And why wouldn't you do a similar thing? I could do this for any group of attorneys, for instance, or wealth advisors, golf course operators. It doesn't matter what the group is. I don't have the skill set to do what they do operationally, for instance, and they don't have the skill set that I do. Those are the people I want to partner with. So, to wrap up, when you think about your consulting capacity or your vision as a consultant, please don't work alone and don't think about working alone. Do these 5 things that I just shared with you. Number one, create your own list of multidisciplinary teams of advisors. These are the people that you like and trust that you could imagine working with, and it's always going to evolve. So that's number one. Number two, host your own peer groups or affinity groups. They could be virtual, they could be direct. It doesn't matter. I also host a book club because I have a book problem. And it's fascinating to me how easy that is and the conversations that result and leads that result from it. Number three, create your personal advisory board, create your team that keeps you going. We all need those teams, and the people are going to evolve. They'll cycle on and off as required. Number four, always ask for client feedback. You need to solicit it. So you're going to, after each session, ask, what are you taking away from this session that you might do next? And number five, speak at groups of people who don't do what you do. Those associations and groups are going to be your future clients. It's targeted, and it's the only way that you're going to accelerate your business. So I just gave you all kinds of content value resources that describe my values so you know a little bit more about me and my business. But more importantly, they're things that you can do immediately, but you probably won't because you probably don't have a catalyst. You don't have a process. You don't have a system. You don't have a bunch of other people that you're hanging with, and you need it. We all do. I've been an athlete for a long time. We need support teams. So, two options. One, schedule a call. Time with Doug is free, and I welcome that opportunity to learn more about you and your business. Number two, just click on the little button that says schedule or join the newsletter. Why? Because it tells me that you don't want to work together now, but you may want to work together later. And I also invite you to share this little video clip with any other advisors that you think in your team would benefit from it. That's it. I hope to be a resource. Look forward to the next conversation that we might have soon. All the best. Bye for now. Okay, so what are the next steps? There's really only three that I think of. One, schedule a call with me. Here's a link down below. Two, maybe you're interested in being included in some of the newsletters we send, I think every other week, so twice a month. These are value adds, content based, and our hope is that they help teach whatever skills and knowledge you might need. And the third is if you want to learn more about this particular interest, just click that third option and I'll share some stories and case studies. So let's get going.